guys, and welcome to the latest edition of Train with Honour TV. And today, I've not only got an athlete, a coach, I've also got an award-winning author. So I'm delighted to welcome to the show Mr. David Mayer. David, welcome to the show, pal.
Thank you, Chris. Appreciate you having me on today.
It's absolutely fantastic to have you on. Now, not the most important. One thing that is fantastic about this is, of course, we're on a massive time difference, aren't we? Because obviously you're seven hours behind over in is it Utah that you're in at the moment?
Yeah, Salt Lake City.
Yeah, so the weather's going to be a lot better as well. So I'm sure you've got the sunshine, and looking out the window now, a bit of light drizzle over here. So typical English weather.
Yeah, no, we've got 30 odd degrees today. So it gets a little bit too hot. Last week I was down in another part of Utah and it was 42 degrees. So
wow.
Can get a bit too much.
Just a little bit jealous. So for the guys that are listening, just want to give a brief introduction to sort of who you are, how you got in, sort of your experiences up to date.
Yeah, absolutely. So I'm an ex-player. I retired at 25. Through injury, I had hip surgery, quite an extensive hip surgery at 25. I've never played since. So that was over 3 years ago now, and I've kicked a ball, but I've never played a competitive game. I've never trained since, which was obviously quite a tough one to take. But I grew up, I played in the academy system in England. I was at Blackburn from a very young age. I never actually played. Well, I played about 4 months of Sunday League at 7. And at the time I was playing a year up because they didn't have my age group. So I was playing up 3-4 months and then ended up at Blackburn, and was at Blackburn through to 14. I remember I went into Blackburn in the start of the under-15s. So basically 2 weeks in, you signed a 2-year contract, so to speak. I mean, they don't mean anything, but you have a 2 years for under 15s and 16s. And I went in, new coach, and got the old adage, you're too small. Oh. You're not going to play, you're too small, which wasn't good to hear. Technically, I was always quite proficient and tidy. I was very athletic and very quick. I was just very small and very slight. So I stopped playing for about a year or so. I played for the school team, and I actually got a personal trainer and went to the gym.
Cool.
Quite a lot. But yeah, I stopped playing. So at 14, as an under 15, 14, 15, I wasn't playing. I just played at school and I enjoyed it. I'm not going to say I fell out of love with the game, but it quite hurt. It hurt me a little bit.
I suppose when it comes to when someone's sort of talking about your height and saying you're too small to play, it's all too common, isn't it, David? At the minute, with a lot of academy players, they say you're too small, but then you look. But what I think a lot of coaches don't understand is that some players are a biological age as opposed to the normal age, aren't they? So some players will grow later on down the line. So I suppose it was a big dent in confidence, really, which potentially was why you sort of took a step back, right?
Yeah, it was. And I was small. I'll never get away from that. I was the smallest player in the age group below, so I was tiny. But I think it's got better now. There's no doubt about that. I think there's a lot more education around it, that players develop at different rates. I was a late developer in terms of physical development, and I only really started growing at probably 16-ish.
Yeah.
So I was tiny. And the thing is, it's whether they wait for it or they don't. And at the time, it didn't happen. Like I said, played at school, and then going into year 11 at school. So as an under 16, I actually I got home one day and we'd received a call from Wigan. I'm from Wigan. Received a call about going to training that night. So took the offer up, went, enjoyed it, and within a couple of weeks they actually offered they wanted to sign me just as an under-16 for the rest of that year. And I don't know why. I didn't accept it. It was that I just wanted to keep going. I wasn't that bothered. I just wanted to keep going. I was enjoying it as it was. And then after probably a month or so, I accepted the contract and stayed there as an under-16. Did well. It was good to be back involved at a level. And we got through to, I think it would have been about April time when they decided the YTs.
Yeah.
And I got offered a 2-year at Wigan, and I wasn't going to accept that either. And I wanted to, but it was more so that my family wanted. My dad's been involved in the game. My dad's an ex-pro. My mum played for England, so they've been around the game.
Yeah.
Their whole lives. My dad's he's now very highly thought of as a coach and has worked with a lot of top people, and he's a coach mentor now, delivered on the pro license. So he's been around the game, and he said the game, and still does, he said the game can be a thief. It can take your time and give you nothing back. So
it is. It's the environment, I suppose, isn't it? The environment,
it is, yeah.
what coaches are about, and
it is, and the education side of it, your career only lasts so long. And my parents were always big on my education. I did well in school. So when I got offered the YT, I was actually, they didn't want me to take it at the time. Like I said, I was unsure. I wasn't sure if I wanted to. And the more I thought about it, I thought, why would I not? It's a great opportunity. And told them I wanted to take it, but they were still unsure on it. They weren't overly keen just because they wanted me to go to college and do all of that stuff. So I remember we actually had one game near the back end of the season. I still hadn't signed the contract, and I had a blinder. And after the game, I got in the car, and my dad looked at me and said, "Son, if you want to take it, I'll support you 100%. If you want to take it, we're happy for you to take it. We want you to. The only thing we ask is that you do your education too." So signed the contract. Was a YT at Wigan, and what I actually did was I spent, instead of doing the BTEC or the course at the time that the club provided, I actually went to Winstanley College, which at the time was the #1 ranked college in the UK. So I went there on our day off from training, and then 2 afternoons a week, and over the course of 2 years got 2 A levels as well, which held me in good stead. Now playing at Wigan, went in, did very well. I'd grown. Physically, I was very, very strong. I was very quick and athletic and technically proficient. But as the full-time football started, even though I went in and did well to start with, and my body kept breaking down.
Right, okay.
And I couldn't stay fit. I mean, it would be pre-season, I was okay. And then we went into playing games, and I'd play a game, and then I wouldn't train for 2 weeks. And it just became this ongoing thing where I had issues with my hips. I have issues with groins. And in that first 6 months as a YT, I probably played 5 games.
Wow.
Ended up having a double hernia surgery at 16, which we were hoping would cure it, and it never did. So I had the hernia. I remember coming back, slow build up, and I went into practice about a week after being back into full practice, and had completely tore my groin, and I was out for another 6 weeks. So it was just a constant. That first year, I probably didn't play 7 or 8 games in my first full year as a YT. So went into the off season. I worked really hard, got very fit again, back into good shape, and went into my second year into pre-season. Again, flying. We had I played for the reserves a couple of times in pre-season. They did a Wigan Athletic 11, so to speak. So any players, first team players that weren't involved, played in the game. And I was involved in the game up at Barrow. Nice. Did very well. I actually scored as a left back. So I was a left back and I scored.
That's some go in that.
In the 80, I think it was like the 88th minute. So I was getting a bit of grief from the crowd too. But It was the same story, to be honest. I'd play, I'd get injured. And even if I'd play and I didn't get injured, I couldn't train for about 4 days because my body, I couldn't walk. It was nuts. So it was ongoing. I remember in my second year in the December, I hadn't played many games, but in that December, we played Tottenham in the FA Youth Cup. So we had a good side. Our youth team at Wigan, we had a good side. We were flying. Some really good players in there. And we played against Tottenham. So Tottenham had 7 players that had already played in the Europa League for the first team.
Wow, so you look at it's like Harry Kane and Harry Winks and that.
Harry Winks was a couple of years younger, but there was Harry Kane, Stephen Colker, John Bostock, Jake Nicholson. Who else was there? The kid from Swansea, Tom Carroll.
Yeah.
So there was Ryan Fredericks at West Ham now. So they were littered. I played against Ryan Fredericks. He played right wing. In the lead up to the game, I actually was told not to play any games or practice in case I did get hurt.
Oh no!
So obviously,
that sounds like a nightmare. You're going to play. You're trying to play, but at the same time, they're trying to preserve you, I suppose. With that, David, what was the reaction of the sports science team at the club? Did you have much support from the medical team? Because obviously they were aware of your injury record. Was there any specific training that they did away from the first team technical stuff to help rehab you back in?
There was a lot. Yeah, there was a lot. It was almost a case of the unknown, to be honest, because everything that would come up, I would do the exercise and I was committed to him. And I got a lot of help from the physio. The physio was a guy called Neil Fitzhenry. He ended up moving on to Northampton Rugby Union. He was a super guy. He helped a lot. And it was just whatever I would get wouldn't work. And even though I needed a hernia. So I had the hernia and I did the rehab, but it still didn't work. So there was a bit of strength work in around the groins, and I did it, and it still didn't work. So it was just a constant. Every time there was something else, and I would do the work, but I would keep breaking down. But I mean, look, they did a lot for me. There's no doubt about that. The physio there, the Dave Watson was the ex-Everton player, who's a super guy. He was the same. Did a lot for me. He was really good with me. I had a lot of time for Dave. So to answer your question, yeah, they did. But it just never happened. Now we go to that Tottenham game. I played in the game and did very, very well. There were actually England scouts at the game, England under-19 scouts. They weren't watching me. They were watching obviously all the Tottenham players.
Yeah.
But I'd done that well, even though I hadn't played that much in the past year. No one would have known who I was because I was never on the field. Yeah,
not a bad thing sometimes, is it?
Yeah, I know. But I'd done very well, and that became a little bit of a thing for a very short period. There was an inquiry, and that was all it was. Because after that game, I went down because I hadn't played. I went down with cramp about 4 times in that game, but couldn't play the next couple of weeks. Then we went into the Christmas break and came back in January, and it was the same thing. And the club decided very early with the players that were going to stay and weren't. So they kept on. I think we had 8 players in total. They kept on, I think, 3 of them.
Okay.
We have 9. They got rid of most, and then myself, they actually pulled me in and said, look, we want you to stay. We want to give you a pro, but we can't give you one unless you can prove you can stay fit. So we'll give you till the end of the season, pretty much. And for me, it was great to hear that they liked me and that I'd obviously done things well, and I'd impressed them in the short time that I had been playing. But the task was now, can I stay fit? So I did and I didn't. I remember I missed quite a bit, and the last game I actually played for the reserves against Hull, up at Hull, and Jimmy Bullard actually played for Hull. There's a video on YouTube. He scored a worldie where he had a free kick and they passed it back to him and he flicked it up and volleyed it over us.
Wow.
And it's gone straight in the top corner. But I remember after that game, because I'd not been fit, I'd missed probably a month of that month and a half, of the 2.5 month period. And they brought me into the office. In fact, right before they did, Roberto Martinez was the manager, and I think I was doing some sort of job, and someone made a comment, just joking around, you know, because the environments are
banter all the time, isn't it?
Yeah, there's a lot of banter flying around, and Martinez was there, and it was aimed at me, and Martinez laughed and he said, "No, you leave this kid alone. He can play. This kid's a player."
Yeah, that's good. Having his backing straight away. Yeah,
I got his backing. Well, minutes later, I walked into the office with Dave and the reserve team manager, and got told I wasn't going to get offered a pro. Wow. And it was because I couldn't stay fit. And I knew it was coming. I wasn't surprised by it. I expected it, to be honest. Yeah. And I knew it wasn't down to anything other than I just couldn't stay fit. And I held my head high on it. I accepted it. And the nice thing was, literally the moment I got that call, within a day, within a couple of days, I was down at, actually, no, sorry. I got that on the Thursday and then I played on the Saturday for the youth team. So I was actually fit at that point. So I played on the Saturday, done well. Yeah, I'd done very well. And then the day after, I got a call and went down to Wigan.
Right, okay.
So went down there, and as per, same. So I went down, played, done well. Got a bit of it was just, I got a dead leg, and it was like a pretty extensive one.
Yeah.
And then while I was around at Wycombe, I actually got asked if I wanted to go. I went to the exit trials, and I remember after the exit trials, the Premier League exit trials, sorry. After they finished, a guy approached me and he says, "David, Glen Hoddle wants to speak to you." So you think,
happy days.
Glen Hoddle, like what? You don't think much of it. I go over, and sure enough, Glen Hoddle sat there, and I never forget. He said, "David, really like you. Think you've got a lot of potential. We would like you to come to Spain. There's obviously a few steps to go through before we get there, but we think that you would fit in great. You've got a lot of potential. We like you as a player." So for me, you have one of England's greatest ever players, and obviously ex-England manager, ex-Premier League manager say that. It's very nice to hear. So I left that day, and for me at that point, what do I do? I wasn't sure where I would go, what I would do. So I ended up choosing Spain.
Why not?
Why not?
And bit of sun. Sun sees soccer, not sangria.
Yeah, no sangria, none of that. But there was plenty of the rest. Now, I was actually supposed to go there in the August of 2010.
Right.
And leading up to it, as usual, the pair I got.
Happy comes on.
I had an issue with my hips, pelvis, and long story. What happened was, it turned out I had what's called osteitis pubis, which is an imbalance of the pelvis and the hips, and that instability caused everything else to be throwing me off. So I spent 8 months rehabbing back in England. Couldn't kick a ball, and then in January of 2011 signed for Jerez in Spain with Glen, so with his academy, and they'd partnered with a third division club. So signed with them, went over to Spain, which was an unbelievable experience. I mean, the coaches that were there,
different class. What was the biggest difference between the English coaches and the Spanish? I mean, obviously you had Roberto Martinez, who was Spanish himself, but what was the biggest difference that you'd find in terms of the culture at the training ground?
Well, the coaches were actually English. They were all English, but they were all, I mean, they were, so Dave Besant, Glen Hoddle was obviously there, Dave Besant, Graham Ricks, but they were so good. I mean, the amount that I improved in the period that I was there was unbelievable. And the players that were there, what would there be? Pretty much every one of them's gone on to play at a level. Sam Clucas, Jordan Hugel.
Crikey.
There's a lot. There's a Kechi Anya who, I mean, look, there's players that have played for the national teams now, but pretty much every player has played professionally. And these are all kids that that had been released for one reason or another, or had never played at a club, and Glenn had seen him. I mean, is the ability for him to spot what he believed to be talent. At the time, you look and you go, well, I'm not sure. You're not really sure, but then you look back and you go, wow, because he's picked up players that, I mean, Sam Clucas, I think he got released from Lincoln.
Wow, that's a shocker, that.
And yeah, and then Glenn's took him over. He's played in the Premier League. He's moved to some big clubs. So Jordan Hugel had never played at a club.
And he's having a great season in the Championship, isn't he, at the minute?
He is, yeah. Played in the Premier League too. So you think about, I look at Glenn's ability to spot and distinguish what he believed to be, I guess, talent. I think the word, when I say talent, potential, I think potential is the better word.
Yeah.
Spot potential. So, look, it was an unbelievable experience. Now, the club that Glenn had partnered with, I don't know the full extent of it, but I know there was some financial issues with the club. I know they owed a lot of money. So what Glenn did was he pulled all the players out and we all went back home.
Right, okay.
This was probably April 2011. And look, what do you do then? So I had options. I can go to clubs in the UK. I know I had the opportunity to sign at clubs. My dad he'd played and been in the US, and I took that option. I explored it, and I thought, it goes back to really when I started at Wigan. The education bit was important for me, and I knew that the standard in the US was good. I mean, there'll be people that'll think, it's just America. It's not going to be this, that, and the other. And trust me, the level of the players I played with were unbelievably good. Unbelievably.
You've got to look at the crowd, haven't you? Because they get they probably get Wembley twice over just for a college game, don't they?
Yeah, for the American football. I mean, we were getting 7,000-8,000, which is a good. That's what probably some League One teams. I mean, in League Two, you're getting a decent crowd there.
Yeah, they don't even get that down the road here at Rochdale, so they'd love that.
Yeah, exactly.
Maybe some of their players need to go over the States and that as well.
Get them through the gates. Well, I took that option. I went over there. I actually went to the national champions over there. So I got there and I'd been sold on the quality of players. So there were players there. There were 4 players that had been US under-20 internationals that were coming in with me. Okay. There were several players that had played for the under-20 internationals, US international team, that were now 21 and over, so they couldn't. Jamaican internationals. There was a kid that actually Real Madrid tried to sign, apparently. So I went in and, again, great experience. So at 18, 19, I've now lived in 3 different places away from home and went there and looked at, the players. DeAndre Yedlin is a good friend of mine. So DeAndre, obviously, is now at Newcastle. One of my best friends, Will Trapp, he's captain the US national team.
Right.
He's at Inter Miami. He had quite a lot of European clubs looking at him.
Is that David Beckham?
Yep, it is. Yeah. So Will's a really close friend of mine, and we speak regular. There was a lot of others. Look, players in that group. I think there's been 4 that have actually played for the full national team. There's been kids that have played for Jamaica national team, but in the first game in the starting 11, every single player, barring one, has played professionally now.
That's really
so again,
cool.
this is a group of players that have played at a high level. So I spent a year at Akron. Good experience. It just wasn't for me in regards to. It wasn't what I envisaged it to be. The place. I would have preferred to have lived somewhere else. I didn't know what I was going into, but I enjoyed the experience. There was no doubt about that. I just thought that I would enjoy it more and get more out of it elsewhere. So I transferred. I ended up transferring to the team that, when I got there, had just been beaten the national championship game in North Carolina. So went down there and spent 3.5 years down there. Played, done well, and Again, even at Akron, I'd had a couple of niggles here or there, but I went to Charlotte. It was the same, couple of niggles, but the older I got, I started to develop around, really like physically develop around 21, 22, where I started to fill out and be able to cope with the game more. And going into my last year, I'd been to Sporting Kansas City in the summer. I'd trained with them, did very well there, and Peter Vermes, the manager, he took a shine to me, which was nice. So the plan was, look, at the end of that year, the draft comes along, and I'd be going in the draft. So I started that season, and long story short, that the start of that season, I had an injury. I broke my arm and dislocated my wrist in practice. Missed a while, and missed the draft.
Jeez.
So
these injuries come at the wrong time, don't they?
It was it'll carry on. So yeah, I decided to stay again for another year. So that was supposed to be I stayed again. And at that point, I guess the interest had started to grow again. So there was KC. I'd been to Columbus. There were a few other clubs as well. I had a guy, an agent I hadn't signed with him, but he was working on my behalf, just speaking to clubs. And we knew that at the end of my last year, all being well, with me being fit, I was going, and I was probably going quite high, as one of the top picks. So that season came in, started off, did very well, was in like national team of the week, all that kind of stuff, which it doesn't really mean anything, but was performing well, very, very, very well, and interest continued to grow, and probably just over halfway through the season, I played every minute. Which is the first time in my life.
Yeah, big confidence boost. You must have had the best coaches there, the best environment there. There must have been something in the water that's, that said, right, you've had enough bad luck. Now is your time, and the gods were shining. This is where you had that sprinkle of gold dust, right?
This was, well, I had the gold dust, and then the gold dust disappeared because about halfway through the season, after playing more than anybody, I went up for a header, concussion, and it's a long story, but I was out for 11 months with it, which was a long one. So I missed the draft, and for me, it was, again, wrong time. So the timing was bad. So knowing full well and speaking to the agent that if I'd have been in the draft, I was going. We'd spoke to clubs. The clubs had basically said that was what was going on, and we knew it was happening. There was stuff around sponsorship deals, all that kind of stuff, and it was obviously, that was very tough for me, because I almost saw it as that was my chance. After everything, that was the chance that I had, and it didn't happen. So 11 months out, I came back, and the one thing that I did have and have had and have developed is the persistence that you're gonna get a knock, you're gonna get pushed back, someone's gonna tell you you're not good enough. But for me, there's a level of persistence there and self-belief that I go, you know what, I can. It doesn't matter what they say, because I still truly believe that I can. And look, there was plenty of tears, like the injuries that I had. I remember breaking my arm. My dad was actually in the US at the time, so he was there, and I remember doing it. And I went straight to hospital with the physios. They had to try and put it back in 3 times because it was quite a significant break. I've got a nice scar to show for it. But I remember after they tried to put it back in and it was unsuccessful, that I called my dad and told him, and I just broke down, because that was I was quite emotional, because for me, I didn't want to, all I wanted to do was play. And that was from 60. I just wanted to play. So after I'd been full time at Wigan, like every time you get a setback and all you see is, I want to play, and then you're not able to. So there's
no matter where you go, isn't it? Because it's not like you haven't given it the opportunity. You've been to Spain, you've been to America, you've been to different clubs, different.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I can imagine that was a big.
Yeah, it was, and again, though, with the concussion, there was there was a bounce back. I know there was something coming, so I came back. I got myself fit. I worked very, very hard to get fit because at that point, being out for so long with nothing at all, you lose a great deal. So I actually was coaching at the time then, and I was coaching and getting fit. So I was now doing both. So that's where the coaching came in. Even while I was playing earlier on, I was coaching, but just as voluntarily. Now I was coaching and getting fit. And come the start of the new season in the US, I went down to Phoenix, Phoenix Rising, so the USL team. The MLS, look, international sports, no one's going to take a look at me. And I knew that. I was realistic with it because I'd been out for so long. They're not going to waste a spot on me when I've been out for pretty much 12 months.
Yeah,
so
I suppose it gets to that time where you know yourself, really, doesn't it? And I suppose this is where you start thinking about new ways to go, isn't it? Really?
Yeah, it was. And look, I went to Phoenix. There was Sean Wright Phillips was there, Peter Ramage, Jordan Stewart. So there was the record goal scorer for Mexico, but a really good group of guys, super group of guys. And I spent a couple of months there, and they liked me. I actually roomed with Peter Ramage, who I get on with very well. Who's a super guy. He's now actually the assistant coach there. But I remember I had a conversation with him right at the back end of preseason. He said, "Look, you know, the manager, look, he really likes you, and I know he wants you to stay. So just keep up. There's one game left. So last game of preseason, did very well, and the manager pulls me aside after the game. He said, "Do you want to stay?" I said, "Yes, I do." He said, "Okay, we've got to have a quick chat. We'll make a decision because we like you. We want you to stay. We think there's a need for you, and then we'll come back to you." And about an hour later, they called me up and said, "Look, we can't sign you right now for reasons that we can't disclose, but we'd like you to stay." And I spoke to him a little bit a couple of days after, and it turned out that because of the international spots, I wasn't able to stay. Now, Didier Drogba was just in the process of buying a third of the club and he also needed an international spot. Right. So I was led to believe. So he took the international spot.
Oh, so you fell out with him then?
Well, yeah. Like I said, they asked me to stay. I couldn't because of my visa. So I took the decision to go home, to move back to England for the first time since 2011. We're now in 2017 at this point.
What was that like?
To move back?
Yeah, because obviously having all that fuss, so to speak, that you really wanted, to then coming back, did it almost feel like you were alone when you come back to the UK, or without any options particularly, or?
Well, I had an option. So, and really the reason I came back was because I had an option. And it was, right. There was a League One club that had said they wanted me to come in. They had a need for a left back. They wanted me to come in for pre-season. And again, for me, I knew that if I could stay fit, I'd be fine. At all the levels that I'd played at, I knew if I'd stay fit, I'd be fine. So it was exciting. Coming back to England was a challenge though, because all my friends were in the US at this point.
Yeah, that's it.
So that was a challenge. There's no doubt about that. But there was an excitement for me of being back at home. I'd been away from home. I'm very close to my family, so I'd spoke to them every day while I was away, and that was obviously very enjoyable for me. So I went. Like I said, I was back home. I was actually on the B license in that off season.
Yeah, right. Okay.
So I was on the B license. I'd got that done. But during the course, I remember I hit a ball and I felt something in my hip, and I didn't feel right. And went and saw a specialist, and 2 days later, it was, you need surgery. And that was it. I was done. I've never played since. So that nothing ever came to fruition of the opportunities that I had. And at that point, it was a case of don't chase the rainbow, because I think at times you can. Now there's the persistence of keeping going and making sure that you're getting done what's needed to be done. But at that point, it was chasing a rainbow if I'd gone for it again. And I was fortunate that I had the B license. And the transition to coaching then took place, and I love coaching. I mean, trust me, I thoroughly miss playing, thoroughly. But I think coaching is probably the next best thing, because I'm still involved in the game at a level. And when I as soon as I was able to coach, I actually went to Manchester City with the soccer schools, their international academy stuff. So spent some time in Abu Dhabi, in Dubai, there. And look, growing up, I was around top coaches, being around my dad, wherever, because he was involved in the academy system. I was with him whenever I was not playing.
Yeah.
So I didn't know it at the time, but I was picking up a lot of traits and good things that he, not only he had, but also other people had too.
The network's key, isn't it, David, when it comes to this? I mean, I know myself from a very, very young age. I was fortunate to start out at Cambridge United, and Dan Ashworth was the Centre of Excellence manager at the time. I just went and watched one session that Dan was running, and you could see the quality there back then. I think he's only about in his early 30s back then. But then you look at the career that Dan's gone on and had, and I suppose the biggest thing is networking, isn't it? Really, having the right network around you to keep you motivated and keep you going. I mean, how did you network? Of course, you spoke just then about learning traits off different coaches. How much of an influence was your networking of you getting into coaching and your real first break?
Oh, it was massive. I think the reason I got into it was because of my dad. Because I'd been around him my whole life as a player, even though he was coaching. It was something that I always liked and I enjoyed, and I was at the time. You're always. I think at the time I thought I was probably a better communicator than I was, but I was still able to project messages to people and was able to get people's attention. And I enjoyed helping people. I enjoyed adding value to people's lives. So if I had a session and people enjoyed it, then I felt like it had gone well.
Yeah.
So I think the understanding of it for me has vastly improved, because at the time, I don't think when I started out, I didn't fully understand what I was doing. I was just doing it.
I think we're all like that, to be fair.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And
especially when players start telling you, no, coach, you do it this way, you do it that way. And it always happens, doesn't it?
Yeah. And I was more of a, look, I'd put on a session. I didn't really know the end result of what it was I wanted, but it was enjoyable. When I say it was enjoyable, they got something out of it. So there were benefits. But the one thing I always had, and it was from growing up, was having that sense of purpose. So if you pass a ball, pass it. If you're gonna run, you move, you run. If you're gonna move here, you move there quickly. We're not gonna amble around.
Yeah.
So I took those traits from my dad, and I think to go back to the networking thing, that was a big help for me, because with my dad knowing so many people, I got to know them too. So I was always social in regards to getting to know these people and speaking to them, and it went in my favor to then how I ended up at City. Met some good people there, and I think the thing is, Chris, wherever you go, you never know who you're going to come across, and you never know what influence or what part they will play in your life. So even from the college recruiting days, I had probably 30 odd offers going into college, and I responded and acknowledged every single one of them. Even when I decided that it wasn't for me, I made the phone call and told them, because I think it was just the right thing to do. They have made the effort to get to me.
Yeah.
And for me, the right thing to do is you reciprocate that and give it back to them. And it actually worked out. Like, we're later down the line, me doing that, it helped in regards to when I transferred. But even through coaching, I think when you come across people, you've got to make them feel special, or make them feel like you care, but also be genuine about it. Because look, if you don't really if you don't and you're just trying to get something out of people, I think people will suss you out very, very quickly. So I'm a people person. I'm not I'm not a drinker. I don't go to parties. If you put me in the middle of a party, I'm not really gonna be the one that's shouting and screaming. But if you put me in a social setting where there's conversation going on, I'll jump in. I'll jump into the conversation and adjust and adapt to my surroundings. And I think I put that down to my upbringing, and it definitely helped me. And as did the network, and that's what's I think has helped me as a coach now. Now I've obviously left City because I'm in the US now. I left City in 2018, got offered quite a good role in the States, in Utah. But the club I'm at, we're actually based in Utah, in the UK, and in Tanzania. So I've spent time in Africa, quite a bit of time in Africa. I spent a lot of time in Salt Lake, Utah, well, different parts of Utah as well.
Very nice areas. So there's no horrible areas really there, is there? It's always the nice areas. And this is testament to the fact that you can tell by the journey that you've been on, Dave. It's not come easy for you. You've gone through a lot. You've gone through a lot of battles. You've overcome a lot of wars in front of you, and that just says a lot in terms of how passionate you are with the game and developing yourself, and wanting to get the best out of people. And just going back to what you said about responding to people that have made the initial response, it just says a lot about how you want to be known, doesn't it? Really, mm-hmm. If people are going to ignore you, all it takes is that one person say, "Oh well, this person's not spoken to me, or he's not got back to me," and then the next thing you know, "Oh well, if he's not spoken to you or she's not spoken to you, I don't want to know him." And that, mm-hmm. and it speaks volumes. So just swiftly moving on, conscious of the time. I know that you got quite a bit on this morning. So recently you put out a best-selling book that you wrote with your dad Keith. Just talk to us a little bit about Gold Dust and the concept behind it.
Yeah, so the book got released November 27th, 2019. So that was, look, it's a coaching book. It's sports specific. The stories within the book are sports specific, but I think it crosses over into every aspect of life, because the book's not around X's and O's and technique and tactics and all that kind of stuff. It's built around the relationships and the connections that you build with people, and the benefits it has, and how you can actually optimize and utilize those relationships to help people become even better at what it is they do. And the Maya Angelou quote, people may forget what you said, they may forget what you did, but they'll never forget how you made them feel. And
that's a great way.
And the book really, it's based around that quote. When people feel good, you're more likely to get more out of them. And even though look, let's go back, if we say it is sports specific, even in sports, techniques and tactics are only a tiniest part of the game. They're important, and I'm never going to get away from that. You have to have an understanding and a knowledge.
Of course.
But you could be the smartest guy in the room and have more knowledge than anybody. But if you're not able to connect with people, and people don't like you, then all you've got is your opinion.
Yeah.
And it means nothing if people don't like you, because the chances are that when people don't like you, they're more likely to critically analyze the things that you say. So whether it be true or not, they're more likely to critically analyze. Whereas if you think of people that you know that you like, if they say something, it's not to say that you have to agree with them, because you're not always going to agree with people.
Yeah.
But you're less likely to analyze critically what it is they say, and more likely to go, you know what? I understand that, and I think that's a good point. So the book, look, we started writing. The book came about in May of last year. It's something that my dad and I live by. I think as a player, there were experiences I had with coaches that weren't great, which it is what it is. People do things in their own way. But for me, look, if as a coach, or if you're in business or whatever it is you're in, if you're bringing people into your environment, you have a responsibility to make sure it's a good experience.
100%.
And you have a responsibility to make them feel important to a level. And every person's going to be different that you deal with. But I had times when I didn't feel that, and there were times when I actually didn't enjoy going to practice because of the environment that was created. And I truly believe that as coaches, we control the environment, and we should provide positive experiences. So my dad and I live by that. We have the knowledge of the game. Look, I have so much more to learn, so much more in every aspect, as does my dad. But with him,
this is the difference. Sorry to put in. This is the difference between someone who cares about the development of the players and someone who just thinks that they've got the qualification and that's it, which unfortunately is all too common with coaches these days. So sorry to put in there, but yeah, I totally 100% agree with that.
Yeah, and look, have there been times when I started off? I mean, I'd done my level 2, and I thought I knew everything. I mean, and don't get me wrong, from my upbringing and from being around what I was around, I was probably ahead of where I should have been at the time. But I thought I knew more than I did. And you only realise the more you go on that when you spend time with people that are in the know, you go, wow, I am so far away. And the more I get to know, the more I realise I don't, and the more I realise there is to learn. And but look, the book, it's been a #1 bestseller for 6 months. In the UK. There's 12 people that feature in the book in sports, from the top youth coaches at top clubs to first team Darren Moore, first team manager, to Michael Beale at Rangers, to the guy that's actually going to be that's on our podcast called Justin Holbrook, who he's a rugby league guy.
Legend at Saints, isn't he? After the success he's had within Super League recently.
He is, and I'm a diehard Saints fan. I'm diehard. Yeah. I grew up on the terraces, and we got to know Justin very well. So we actually were very fortunate to spend time at the club, in the change rooms, in the meetings, and all that stuff when he was there. And what an unbelievable guy. But he came to a club that was struggling and didn't really change many players. I think he brought in 3 players in a 2.5-year spell, but took them from mid-table to being arguably the best team that have ever been in the Super League. I mean, they finished 16 points ahead of anyone else, and they walked it. So for me, that you look at that and you go, there's something else going on, because you can make a tweak here and there about the tactics, but what he did was he made the players, he gave them a sense of responsibility, made it an enjoyable environment, and he let them know that he genuinely cared about what it is they do. And look, you could tell from the players that they loved it. So Justin Holbrook's in it. There's a 2-time former world champion martial artist who's now he's an ex-teacher, and now he has his own gym that's had over 50 champions in it.
Wow.
So look, it was stories and experiences from my dad and I, and things that we've gathered and learned over the years. But it was also what do all these other exemplars do? And we found that there was massive similarities between them all, and we compiled it. I spent numerous hours in what I called Hotel Starbucks, where there was times I was in there for 6 hours. It only took 4 months to write the book, but it was because I was in there for 5-6 hours sometimes in a day. I was there pretty much every day of the week.
Yeah, you're in the zone, and you know what you want to put down in that, and that's what you got to do, right?
Absolutely. And for me, even when I wanted to play, if I want something, it's happening now. The playing obviously was the injuries that stopped it, but I committed to it full 100%. I was in, and it was, if I was doing fitness, I would make sure I would do everything I could. If I was writing a book, I was doing it to the fullest extent. I was making sure that book was getting written, and obviously with my dad there with me, we didn't know it at the time, but it's done very well, and it's provided value to coaches. And look, if it provides value to the coaches and they learn, it's going to help the athletes. And if it helps the athletes, it's done its job.
Yeah,
because
definitely.
really that's what it boils down to. It boils down to the people that come through the door. You're actually part of their journey. So you're just a small fraction of their journey. And if you can help them on the journey and make it better, take them along that journey to a better place than when they started at, then you've done your job. And the book revolves around that. I mean, I'm unbelievably proud of it. It's something that I'll take to the grave with me, that I've had a best-selling book. But look, there's more to come. Like I said, we brought out a podcast on the back of the success of the book, which has been well received too.
A really good one at that. A really good one at that as well, may I say. I have to listen to it a couple of times. So for people to get to know, to connect with you and find out a bit more about yourself and the work that you're doing, what's the best way to connect with you, David?
Yeah, so I'm on your Twitter and your Instagram. So my Twitter handle is DJ Mayor3. So I've not been on today, but I'll go up. But look, if people want to interact with me, I'm more than happy to share ideas with people and to learn from them too. I think that's what it's about. 100%. So more than happy that the podcast Twitter handle is Gold Dust Podcast, and then the book's available. It's available all over the world now in loads of different platforms, but the primary is Amazon. So we self-published it out on Amazon, and we did all the legwork to get it to where it is. We didn't have anybody helping us, and we were dead set on making it get as far as possible. And look, we want the book we want it on every coach's shelf, because we think that it can add value and help people. And look, even if there's a snippet of information, if there's a little bit of gold dust in there that helps people, then I'm happy with it. And look, I'm more than happy to connect with people. I, like yourself, you reached out to me, and it goes back to what I said earlier. You even if this wasn't possible because of a time constraint, it wouldn't be for the want of not trying or for any other reason. And I'm more than happy to speak to people. And time's limited, especially now. I'm unbelievably busy, but I'll give as much as I've got for people that need advice or they need help or that can help. Because again, if they can help me as well, then brilliant, and I can learn. That's what it's about.
100%. Well, hopefully there'll be a few more subscribers to your podcast. Hopefully a few more people will be ordering the book as well. And so I want to say a massive thank you, Dave, for coming on the podcast. It's been absolutely fantastic and really, really inspirational to hear your story. And I just want to wish you all the best for the future going forward. I look forward to having a catch up soon.
Yeah, thank you, Chris. Appreciate you inviting me on too. I hope it's added value to those that listen.
Fantastic. Thanks very much for that, buddy.